Hey Jackson, did you see this headline? Microsoft taps Anthropic for copilot, cowork, and push for AI agents.
Yeah, I was just looking at this.
Yeah, so I wrote a quick summary of it, and then we can go through bits of the article. But I have some initial thoughts. But essentially, Microsoft has that deal with OpenAI, and now they have a deal with Anthropic as well to use Anthropic's APIs and make Anthropic models available in the Microsoft Copilot and AI tools. And some of my thoughts on that are Microsoft's distribution. It's already installed in so many enterprise businesses. Their distribution is going to siphon out other competitors, just like Microsoft Teams took a lot of Slack customers. If you're already paying for Microsoft stuff, why would you pay a separate company for something you're already paying for? So why would you keep paying Slack when you already have access to Microsoft Teams in your Office 365 contract?
Right.
So cowork is trying to sort of replace or work in the same way that the Anthropic cowork tool was. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, so Copilot Cowork is different than Claude Cowork, right?
Or Microsoft is Copilot. Microsoft
Gotcha.
has Copilot and Anthropic has Claude Cowork. And so the thing that Claude Cowork does is it can create spreadsheets, it can create slideshows on all the tools on your computer. And Microsoft and Copilot is going to do the same thing, but it's going to, instead of work on your computer, it's going to work in like OneDrive in Microsoft's cloud. So it's going to be good for a lot of people who already know how to navigate OneDrive pretty well and they're used to using it. And Microsoft says its enterprise customers actually prefer that Microsoft Copilot controls documents in the cloud. Then the enterprise clients can control more of what the people are doing if it's in the cloud. But as an end user and employee, you'll probably feel less control over your documents. You're not just messing with things on your computer. You have to interact with things in the cloud. I think employees are not going to like Copilot as much as they like Claude Cowork for people who have used both. I personally hate trying to find things in OneDrive, and I hate when coworkers send me things in OneDrive. So also Claude's Cowork has the plugin system, and that's what was causing all the fuss with the SaaS, the death of the SaaS, and why I had a little bit of a crash whenever, at least in SaaS investments, whenever Anthropic announced that. So I wrote here, Claude Cowork and its plugin system is what worried investors in SaaS, thinking that AI agents like Claude Cowork will be able to replace separate services that businesses are paying for. And Microsoft is implementing those same models into into Copilot. And I feel that this model will affect some contracted workers in SaaS businesses, but I'm honestly curious if this is going to birth like a new IT adjacent industry that focuses on making the LLMs better, maybe more LLM services that businesses can plug into Microsoft Cowork. So it may be more of like a model-based business instead of SaaS, like we control or we can handle this pipeline or this small part of your business. It's now businesses are going to sell ultra-specific LLMs and maybe pre-trained agents. Like you may put in you'll interface through like a Claude Cowork or a Microsoft Copilot with the MasterCard CFO that we spoke about a couple weeks ago. Like you'll be able to pull in that plugin. These other businesses are just going to have models that are pre-trained on what you want them to do. Like maybe you have a model that's trained on finances, a model that's trained on your business's information, and businesses are either going to have their IT departments build those models or hire contractors to build those models. Even if you're hiring or buying like an Anthropic subscription or OpenAI, you're still going to have people pre-train or fine-tune those models. And so the motivation for Microsoft to do this is there was a lot of the Microsoft investors didn't like that Microsoft was essentially married to OpenAI and was very tightly coupled to them. And so this is Microsoft trying to widen the net. They're making deals with other LLMs, and I imagine you're going to see deals with like the MasterCards of the world, or any other SaaS company is going to have their own models and plugins. Like you're going to have to still pay a license to that SaaS, and that last license will just give you an AI that has access to all your data, like HR, ERP, stuff like that.
Yeah, this is interesting because Microsoft has like a pretty significant stake in OpenAI. At least they used to. So it does seem like using a competitor's product. I wonder if that's kind of admitting that Anthropic really has the industry of like autonomous agents really dialed in right now, way more than OpenAI does.
Yeah, I took it as a diversification. Like they don't want their customers to be fully tied into OpenAI as well. It seems like Microsoft would want to buy OpenAI or be heavily invested in it, but it seems like they're kind of walking back on that, and they're trying to just be the enterprise platform that then pulls in other models and stuff.
Right. So is this specifically Microsoft is using Anthropic's models or just their harness and then, kind of taking that Claude cowork harness and then putting any model into it?
I think they have a limited amount of models that they can actually use in Copilot, from what I understand. They are trying to be the Claude cowork. They're trying to do the same thing that Claude cowork was doing.
For the enterprise level.
Right. I think we'll see a pattern the same way that we did with Slack. A lot of businesses were using Slack for, communicating with each other. And then whenever people didn't want to pay for another subscription, or they were essentially 3 to 5 years after COVID, when people realized they overhired, they needed to cut costs. And one of the things was, maybe they're dropping Slack because they already have Teams and it's cheaper with their Microsoft bundle. And so Microsoft is seeing this as an opportunity to build into that. Because even Slack is adding like an AI, an LLM client.
Right.
Slack is trying to do the same thing. Obviously, Cowork is trying to, Anthropic's Claude Cowork is trying to get into the enterprise world. But Microsoft already has the clients. So I see that we're going to move into people will use Claude Cowork, and then whenever they need to cut subscriptions, they'll get rid of Claude Cowork and then use Microsoft's Copilot and plug it into all their systems.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Especially, considering Microsoft really is already in pretty much every business. So
Yeah.
they already have that market.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that this article is saying companies feel very uncomfortable having their employees run these tools locally, whereas they prefer having it in the cloud. Because
Right.
I feel like a lot of the hesitation a lot of companies have comes from sending their data to the cloud, so they'd prefer to run it locally, but this kind of is saying the opposite.
Yeah, it's somewhere in this article they mentioned that their clients prefer things being in the cloud instead of on people's computers, because then the enterprise has access to everything that they're doing and things are shared. So yeah, we work only in cloud environment and we work only on behalf of the user. So you know exactly what information, and so they're calling it Copilot Cowork. That's confusing.
That's too much.
Yeah.
Rebrand.
So you know exactly what information Copilot Cowork, has access to. Jared Spataro, who leads Microsoft's AI at Work efforts. And this article is from Reuters.com. Claude Cowork only works locally on the device, and most companies feel very uncomfortable with that. And so Microsoft is trying to answer that by saying, look, all their work will be in the cloud and everyone will have access to it. Not like a laptop gets stolen or lost or broken, but most companies, I feel like, are backing up to the cloud all their employee computers anyways.
Right.
So it's an interesting move. And I don't know if it's a real pain point that they sent out a survey on and it's real, or if they are just essentially you have one company who's going local first and you have Microsoft who's going cloud first. It's just like another flavor and it's a selling point.
Yeah.
And it's currently in testing and will be available in early access to users later in March. So it's probably being rolled out now. The launch comes weeks after Anthropic introduced new tools for Claude that intensified investor concerns that AI agents could pose to traditional software companies. I don't know. Do you think, there's going to be some SaaS death. Like there's going to be some SaaS companies that will go away. I think we saw, you would think that Excel was around before a lot of SaaS. They kind of, anytime you see an Excel spreadsheet being passed around, that's an opportunity for a SaaS. And so when you start to see prompts being passed around, it's an opportunity for a SaaS, or at least for somewhere for that to get centralized. And I think companies are going to pay to have that enterprise prompts, stored somewhere.
Yeah.
In the cloud.
For sure. I think the simpler SaaS companies might get hit pretty hard, and the ones that you can just rebuild pretty easily. But there's still a lot of very intricate companies, like Twilio, for example, you can't really vibe code,
Yeah. Stripe, like the payment gateways, those companies that have to have like a huge relationship with, federal regulators and stuff like
Yeah.
payments and communication. You're always going to have big companies sending email, text, receiving payments, and also like there's like, Sanity CMS, like there's a bunch of headless CMS companies. There's apps like make.com, Zapier, Retool, things like that, where it was essentially their selling point was to allow employees to build their own tooling. And I
Yeah.
think with vibe coding, the tools are going to get a lot better for these enterprise companies to allow their employees to build software to solve their own problems. And so I think some companies, some SaaS businesses will die, but also like you're not going to go, it doesn't matter vibe coding or not, you're not going to go rebuild like a HubSpot. Like you definitely can't build Twilio, but I think a lot of companies are going to think that they can build a CMS or a CRM, ERP, but it's going to be a lot more effort and work than they think. And that work's going to go to IT, and the IT is going to have to manage those things. Reports, like a lot of companies have had, people whose whole job is to know spreadsheets and know how to build dashboards. And so that kind of stuff will kind of get consolidated, I think, as people can have access to data, get those into the LLMs, and then build reports on the fly as they want.
Yeah. Dylan, we can't call it vibe coding anymore, by the way.
What are we calling it?
Agentic engineering.
Agentic engineering. Okay, cool. The birth of agentic engineering. When did that happen? When did you hear about that?
It's just, if you want to sound professional now, that's what you say.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep calling it vibe code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agreed 100%. You said like companies think they will be able to rebuild everything. I think it's going to end up, they're going to hit a point where it's just going to become a trade-off of spending the resources rebuilding this tool or just pay for the SaaS. So I could see it bringing down prices for SaaS companies, maybe lowering their margins.
SaaS companies will have to deliver less, right? You don't have to own so much of a UI. You may just be an API as a service, and you calculate that data in a special way, or you provide redundancy. Yeah, SaaS companies are going to have to fight for their value and really start to pivot and encourage all the AI tools to use their data so they don't lose their customers.
Yeah, agreed. And seeing Microsoft take over this part, I think it's just going to amplify that or accelerate that because of all the companies that are going to immediately have access to this.
Yeah. I was talking with a CTO earlier this week, and they are looking into like 3 or 4 tiers that like whatever vibe, I'm going to say vibe coded, like that these vibe coded apps reach into. It's like a tier 1 is like an employee built something and it solves their problem. And that's like tier 1. And then tier 2 is like, okay, now like 3 or 4 people need to use this. And you tie it down to just those 3 or 4 people. And then when it's like a whole department that needs it, like sales or marketing or finance needs this thing that somebody built, it has to then get handed over to, a team that can actually manage it and make sure that it can scale and the right people have access to it. So the big companies, at least, who have employees who are getting into this agentic engineering are going to find that managing software is pretty difficult. And eventually that person like vibe coded something is going to end up owning it. And then they'll either turn into what IT is now, or
exactly.
It'll have to be handed off to a consultant or somebody to manage it for them.
Yeah. It's changing the way the software is built, but it's not removing all of the effort that goes into software.
Yeah. So, I mean, Microsoft has huge distribution. They're already in so many people's offices. They're going to continue to pivot and build what their customers want. And I think we're seeing just even the big enterprise companies like Microsoft being able to pivot and build new products quickly because of agentic coding tools. Last paragraph of this Reuters article, the move deepens Microsoft ties with Anthropic at a time when investors have questioned its dependence on OpenAI, which accounts for nearly 45% of Microsoft's cloud business contract backlog.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, the stuff's coming to you. And if you build a SaaS, you gotta really fight for your value now and see how you can get into that Microsoft ecosystem and provide the right MCP tools. And if you're a consultant or you're an IT person, like you need to get in and learn how these things are working. Because every company, like the thing that makes AI powerful is unique data, right? And the internet is pretty vague, and the internet is what ChatGPT and Claude are trained on. So your company, like getting your company's data into these LLMs is going to be very valuable. And the companies that crack that and are able to do that are going to win. So
yeah,
that's
for sure.
all. That's all for today. Thank you so much for listening. We do these every day. If you are in business, you're a small business owner and you're wanting to know where AI fits into your business, come back tomorrow. We do these daily. We do AI news for small business. And if you are trying to find where AI fits in your business, we do a webinar where we are training small business owners where AI will fit in their business. And we even do free consultations where we will take your current workflow, your current pain points in your business, and we will help you find where AI can help solve those and where AI will not solve those. All right. See you tomorrow.
Cool. See ya.